An ordinary three-story home in central Gloucester became the focal point of very dark secrets in 1994. The large family that lived at 25 Cromwell Street had been subject to a lot of rumors as one of their daughters seemingly vanished. Everyone worried about what happened to the girl, and her parents' changing stories brought fear to many. Why didn't she visit? Why did she break off all contact with everyone she knew? First, the parents would say that Heather took a job far away, a job she was initially rejected for. Next, people were told she married a woman and ran away. Then she was living a life with drug cartels. What was happening? 7 years had passed and no one heard from Heather, while her parents appeared to care less. Authorities were alerted by the web of lies the West parents spun. On February 24th, 1994, Fred and Rose West's vile and twisted secrets would begin to trickle out when their garden would be dug up. The family had been the center of many rumors, but no one was prepared to hear of the most unthinkable acts that occurred in the House of Horrors. Welcome to another episode of Crimson Sin with Tamsin Lee. I am your host, Tamsin Lee. A link to today's show notes can be found in the description. Stay up to date, watch behind-the-scenes exclusives, find episode transcripts, and more at my Buy Me a Coffee and Patreon pages. You can also check out some of my items on sale in the Tamsin Lee shop. The links to all of these sites are also in the description. Don't forget to follow me so you don't miss an episode. Also, if you like today's episode, give it a like and a comment. I am going to place a disclaimer in this episode. It is completely atrocious and vile. If you are sensitive to subjects such as domestic abuse, sexual assault, prostitution, incest, and anything else under the moon, please do not listen any further because some of the things I am going to say during this episode are more than just unpleasant. It's revolting and things that I never thought I would say. Today's case brings us to Gloucester, England, where one of the most horrific cases I have ever researched occurred. I could not believe the amount of physical, psychological, emotional, and sexual abuse that occurred in this house. Just the sheer amount of pain these children went through is just astounding. So let's take a look into the life of some of the worst human beings I have researched so far. Frederick Walter Stephen West was born on September 29th, 1941, at Bickerton Cottage, Muchmarcle, which is about 120 miles west of London. He was the first surviving child of Walter Stephen West and Daisy Hannah Hill. He entered this world with piercing blue eyes and blonde hair. His father, Walter, was described as a disciplinarian, while his mother, Daisy, was considered overprotective. Despite the war and the poverty in which the family lived, Walter and Daisy had 8 more children, with only 6 surviving. All of them were born within 10 years. Fred and his mother enjoyed a very close relationship and was known to be her favorite. He was described as her pet, and he would do everything she asked of him. He also had a reasonably good relationship with his father, whom he looked up to and considered to be his role model. The family moved to Moorcourt Cottage, located next to the Moorcourt Farm, which was on the outskirts of Muchmarcle in 1946. Fred's father worked as a milking herdsman and harvest hand at this farm. The cottage they lived in had no electricity and was heated by a log fire. As Fred grew older, his blonde hair became a curly, unkempt, dark brown color, and would go on to inherit his mother's big mouth and the gap between the two front teeth. Many would claim he was a scruffy-looking character. The West children were expected to perform assigned chores, as most children are when they're living on a farm. All 6 children would do seasonal work. The 3 boys would harvest wheat and hunt rabbits, while the 3 girls would pick hops and strawberries. The hard work of growing up on a farm instilled a strong work ethic in Fred. But he also developed a lifelong habit of petty theft. While in school, he was not as favorable with his classmates as he was in his family. He was not the sharpest tool in the shed and would constantly get in trouble, for which he would be caned. His mother, who was seriously overweight, would go to the school to yell at the teacher for disciplining her favorite son. Something that made Fred the butt of many jokes, as he was then labeled a mama's boy. Fred's classmates would recall him as being scruffy, dim, lethargic, and regularly in trouble. He would leave school in December 1956 at the age of 15, practically illiterate, to work as a farmhand on Moorcourt Farm. He would later claim that when he was 12 years old, his mother had sexually abused him. In his early teens, he engaged in acts of bestiality, and that his belief that incest was normal stemmed from his father's incest with his sisters. He would claim that his father's logic was, "I made you, so I'm entitled to have you." Fred would also go on to claim that he himself made one of his sisters pregnant. Whether these events were true or not is up for debate because he was a habitual liar as well. Fred's youngest brother would also go on to dismiss these claims as a fantasy. When Fred was 16, he took more care in his appearance to become more attractive to girls. He was described as extremely aggressive with the opposite sex and would go after any girl who caught his eye. At 17, Fred was seriously injured in a motorcycle accident which left him in a coma for a week. A metal plate was placed in his head and his leg was broken, which resulted in him having one leg being permanently shorter than the other. Some believed that his head injury caused him to become prone to sudden fits of rage. They also believed that he appeared to lose control of his emotions, which none of this is really new for anyone that listens to a lot of true crime podcasts and stuff. Usually when a person has a really bad head injury, it damages their brain and they lose control of, their emotions and all the other kind of stuff. Even with a concussion, that can happen. Not long after his recovery, Fred would meet a 16-year-old girl named Catherine Bernadette Costello, also known as Rena. She was known to be in trouble with the law since early childhood. At 16 years old, she was an experienced thief. Almost immediately upon meeting, the pair became lovers. However, it was a short-lived romance, as Catherine would go back home to Scotland a few months later. But Fred wouldn't let this transient relationship get the better of him. He would soon find himself at a local youth club, standing on a fire escape with a young woman. He stuck his hand up her skirt. The woman, disgusted by his behavior, knocked him off the fire escape. Fred banged his head and lost consciousness. Between the accident and this incident, many have suggested it left a lasting impact on Fred's behavior and ultimately caused him to suffer from brain damage. In 1961, Fred would go on to steal a watch strap and cigarette case from a jewelry store with his friend. They wouldn't get far before they were caught with the merchandise in their possession, and both would be fined. Only a few months later, Fred would be accused of impregnating a 13-year-old girl who was a friend of the family. But apparently, he didn't find anything wrong with his actions, as he was uncooperative with authorities and even stated, "Well, doesn't everyone do it?" His attitude and scandal caused an unforgivable fracture in the relationship with his family, and he was soon cast out of the family home, a complete disgrace to his entire family. Away from his family and the farm, he would find work on construction projects. But it would not be long before he was caught stealing from the construction site and having sex with underage girls. At his trial for having sex and impregnating the 13-year-old, his physician would claim that Fred was suffering from epileptic fits. Because of this, he was let off without a jail sentence for a serious crime. Fred West was a convicted child molester and petty thief at the ripe old age of 20. While his family was ashamed of him, they would eventually allow him to return to their home in 1962. During the summer, Rena Costello came back from Scotland and immediately sought out Fred. A troubled girl who was an experienced teenage delinquent had a long record of prostitution and burglary. The pair seemed to be a perfect match for each other. It is speculated that Rena returned from Scotland because of her family's displeasure with her mixed-race pregnancy. At the time she returned to Fred, she was impregnated by an Asian bus driver. But the couple would go on to tell his parents that the child Rena was carrying was Fred's. The couple would secretly marry on November 17, 1962. The only guest in attendance was Fred's younger brother. Fred and his bride would live with his aunt for a little while before they moved to Coatbridge, where he worked as an ice cream van driver. Rena would give birth to her daughter Charmaine in March 1963. At her birth, Fred and Rena would write to his mother stating that their baby had died during childbirth and that Rena adopted a mixed-race child. While Rena had been a prostitute at various times throughout her life, she was not prepared for her husband's voracious sexual appetite. He very rarely wanted to have sex conventionally. At all hours of the day and night, he wanted oral, bondage, and sodomy. With his job as an ice cream truck driver, he was provided with unlimited access to so many young women, basically a predator's paradise. He appeared as polite, trustworthy, and sincere. His ability to tell interesting and captivating tales made him even more attractive to teenage girls who came to his ice cream truck. While he continuously seduced many young women, his obligations to Rena and Charmaine seemingly turned into afterthoughts. But he would remain extremely possessive of his wife and kid. In 1964, Rena and Fred had a daughter named Anna Marie. Their marriage seemingly became on again, off again for several years. The family nanny, Isa McNeil, and neighbors reported that Fred was harsh to the children, while Rena was a good mother who struggled to bring up two young children. But what made Fred so harsh was that he kept the children in the bottom bunk of a bunk bed. He had fitted the bottom bunk with bars, keeping them locked up as if they were in a cage. They were only allowed out of this makeshift cage when he was at work. It was during this time that Fred and Rena met 16-year-old Anna McFall through their nanny. When she became acquainted with the West family, her boyfriend had recently been killed in a workplace accident. Anna would spend a lot of time in the West home. Rena would soon discover Fred's infidelity, and in retaliation, she began having an affair with a man named John McLaughlin. Of course, Fred would soon find out about his wife's infidelity and be very angry. He caught Rena in an embrace with John. So Fred decided to punch his wife, making her scream. John then punched Fred in response to his actions toward Rena. After receiving a punch from his wife's lover, Fred drew a knife and grazed it against John's abdomen. John would punch Fred another time, and after the second punch, he stopped defending himself. John and Rena would continue their affair, and every time he saw Rena, he was astounded by the bruises and black eyes she wore. Her lover would state that Fred couldn't tackle a man, but he wasn't so slow in attacking women. As it became increasingly more and more apparent that Fred was beating his wife, John beat up Fred. John would also witness another instance in which Charmaine, just a little older than a toddler, had asked Fred for some ice cream from his van. Instead of getting her ice cream or making up some excuse as to why she couldn't have one, he struck her hard against the head, which John would attack him for in return. On November 4th, 1965, Fred accidentally ran over and killed a small boy in Glasgow with his ice cream truck. Authorities cleared him of any wrongdoing. Still, he feared potential reprisals from the locals. Due to this fear, he moved to Gloucester with Charmaine and Anna Marie, renting a caravan at the Timberland Caravan Park in Bishop's Cleeve in December. His wife would not join him and their children until February 1966, along with their nanny and Anna McFall. Isa McNeil and Anna McFall both came from impoverished backgrounds, and they hoped that in this move they would be able to find work. Shortly after the move, Fred started working in a slaughterhouse. It is speculated that working at the slaughterhouse had a profound effect on Fred. It is highly suspected that it was here that he started to develop a morbid obsession with corpses, blood, and dismemberment. With the affairs and the move, Rena and Fred's marriage became more and more unstable. Fred started to show dominance and control over the 3 women living with him, and was prone to having violent mood swings, of which Rena and McNeil would catch the brunt. He would also go on to encourage Rena to go back into prostitution so they could receive more income. He was known to have physically attacked Charmaine at least a few times by this point, and it is speculated that Fred had started sexually abusing her at this time. With all of this going on, Rena wanted out of her marriage. She wanted to take her children and go back to Glasgow. So she called John McLaughlin, begging him to rescue her, her children, and Isa McNeil from Fred. To escape, Rena, John, and McNeil devised a plan. John and McNeil's boyfriend, John Trotter, would drive to Bishop's Cleeve and take everyone except Anna McFall back to Scotland. On the night Rena, Charmaine, Anna, and McNeil were supposed to meet the men, Fred arrived with an oddly calm Anna McFall. It is widely believed that she had informed Fred of the plan Rena cooked up. Anna also stated her intention of staying with Fred to work as the children's nanny. Of course, an altercation ensued between Fred and his wife's lover. Fred clutched onto his children as John struck him several times. Authorities were called to break up the fight. Ultimately, John McLaughlin, John Trotter, McNeil, and Rena left while Fred threatened to kill Rena if he ever saw her again. Rena was miserable without her daughters. and would frequently travel to England to visit her girls. At first, she would maintain a friendship with McFall, but soon she started to resent her playing mom to her children. Rena stole some belongings from Fred's trailer on October 11th in an act of resentment and returned to Glasgow. The next month, she was arrested and returned to Gloucester. On November 29th, she was sentenced to 3 years probation. Fred testified at the hearing and admitted he was living with McFall. However, he would falsely claim that Anna intended to return to Scotland. Rena would continue to alternate between living with Fred and returning to Glasgow. According to letters Anna McFall sent to her family and McNeil in Glasgow, she believed that having a relationship with Fred would provide her with a better life. In early 1967, Anna became pregnant with Fred's child. She would try her best to persuade Fred to divorce Rena and marry her.